Hello everyone, I am Rosana Angelica Padillo, and today I am tasked to talk about language and its characteristic. So the first question we have today is, what is language? For you, what is language? Okay, language is the method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured or conventional way, or let's simply say, language is a system of communication used by a particular country or community. We have to remember that in language, speech is primary while writing is secondary. There are two kinds of language, okay? First is speech, is through speaking, and second is through writing. Language is always changing. It is dynamic. Some words used to communicate before are quite different from what we are using today. It changed so much that certain words and phrases are lost in the past. Okay? There are words before that we don't use anymore because we have created another words. Because we have learned today that language is always changing. It is dynamic. We can rephrase, we can create different words for us to use in our present age. When I tried to research Tagalog words, I found that there are many words that we no longer use, or we in our present age there are words that we are comfortable using through English than in Tagalog. Okay, some language are changing, some words are lost, some words are dead because we no longer used it or we have replaced it. Okay, even though language is always changing, this characteristic that we are gonna learn today remains relevant and important for us to communicate. Okay, there are 10 characteristics that we are gonna learn today, and the first one is language is arbitrary. So what does arbitrary means? Language is arbitrary. Okay. Arbitrary means not done for any particular reason or it is being done randomly. Language is arbitrary because they are not belonging to naturally to the information that they code. For example, why do we call a rat rat? Do you know what is the reason why we call a rat rat? Is it because of its body? It's shaped like letter R? Or is it because of the sound that it produces while it's running? It's like okay? Or is it because when we try to dissect a rat word comes out? No, right? So that explains why language is arbitrary. Language is arbitrary because it is used for no particular reason. Understood? Number 2. Language is social. Language is a set of conventional communicative signals used by humans for communication in a community. So we know that we humans are created to socialize. We are created to have relationship to one another. We are created to have relationship to one another. So what if there's no language? How are we to communicate to one another? How are we to have relationship to other people? It is very hard, right? So that simply explains why language is social. 3. Language is symbolic. Language consists of various sounds, symbols, and their graphic signs that are used to denote something. Some language contains a system of symbols used for written communication. So for example, when we talk about Chinese, Mandarin, or their language, we know that they have their own symbols, or when they write a word, they have certain symbols for that certain word. Okay? We have learned in our Chinese subject that even though when we try to understand their language, it is very hard for us because they have their own certain symbols to understand their own language. Or let's try thinking the general symbols, okay? First, when we think about a dove, what comes next to our mind? Okay, a dove is a bird, a dove is color white, a dove is a flying bird, okay? But what does it symbolizes? Good. Dove symbolizes peace. So that explains why language is symbolic. It has its own symbols or its meaning that we can understand. Okay, a dove symbolizes peace. Or when we think about color red, what comes next to our minds? It is love. Okay. Or when we think about sky, what does it symbolizes? Is it a hope? Okay. So there are many other symbols that we used for us to understand language. That is, language is symbolic. Our third characteristic. So we are now on our fourth characteristic. Fourth, language is systematic. Although language is symbolic, yet its symbols are arranged in a particular system. All languages have their system of arrangement. It means language has their own grammars and sounds. Okay, for example, let's say when we think of Chinese, they have their own system of their own language. When we tried to read a Chinese word in English form, we thought that it is pronounced that way, right? But when our teacher taught us or corrected us that it is not pronounced that way because they have their own system, that simply means that their language uses that kind of system. And not only in China, also in different or also in other countries, they are using their own system. Even also as Filipinos, we are using our own system of our language. Okay? That is fourth, language is systematic. Fifth, language is vocal. Language is primarily made up of vocal sounds only. So before, we are using language only through speaking. That is why I have said earlier that language has two kinds. Okay, first is speech, second is writing. So before, they are only using language in vocal sound form or speech. Okay, in the beginning it appeared as vocal sound only. Then writing comes much later as an attempt to represent vocal. So when writing came, it became much easier for us to express ourselves. Okay, it became much easier for us to communicate to other people, especially those that are far away, because of writing. Okay, it became easier for us. Writing is an intelligent attempt to represent our vocal sounds or our language in speaking form. Okay. Sixth, language is non-instinctive or conventional. Language is non-instinctive or conventional. No language was created in a day out of mutually agreed upon formulas by a group of humans. Okay. Language is not created for a day, or we don't learn language easily. We don't learn language for a day or half a day. It is not easy for us to learn language. Maybe some words can learn different words for a day, but we don't learn language that easy. It is a process for us. I have read that language is also part of our system while growing up. At the age of 2, a child can start learning language, okay? They can learn language. So maybe that is the main reason why kids these days are very smart, or they can use they can use English language very well, because they are open to learning to English through the technologies that we are using today. Okay, but also for us as individual, we learn language through process. Okay, it is conventional. We cannot learn language for a day, or we cannot learn language because we agreed to create language very easily. Okay. 7th, language is productive and creative. Language has creativity and productivity. The structural elements of human language can be combined to produce new words. So, language is productive and creative. Why? Because we can use new words, combine a word, 2 words to create a new word. For example, we as Filipino, we are very creative. We can create new language. We can produce new language for us to easily understand one another. It became easier for us to understand each other when we try to rephrase or produce new words. Okay, there are many words today for a Filipino that we are comfortable using when we communicate to one another. Okay. 8. Language is a system of communication. Language is strong, convenient, and the best form of communication. It is the best way to express everything, okay? Language is our way of communication. It is very easy for us through language to express ourselves. It is through language that we humans express our thoughts, desires, emotion, and feelings. Because what if there's no language? How are we to express ourselves? How are we to communicate? Okay? So we have to remember our 8th characteristic is language is our system of communication. 9th, we are on our 9th characteristic. Language is human and structurally complex, okay? Again, language is human and structurally complex. Human language is open-minded, extendable, and modifiable. On the other hand, animal language is not. Okay, language should be modifiable through time to time. Okay, we can rephrase, we can modify, we can extend, we can change or recreate or reproduce, rephrase our own language because it is very open. Okay, on the other hand, we are to see that animal language is not. So we have our privilege that we can learn language and we can modify our language. Okay? So that is our 9th characteristic. The 9th characteristic is language is human and structurally complex. 10th, our 10th characteristic is language is unique. Language is a unique phenomenon in the world. It has its own creativity and productivity. Despite their common features and language universals, each language has its strange and distinctive features. Okay, for example, when we think about our nearby countries, we realize that we have our language similarities. Okay, but even though we have our similarities, we know that it has its own distinctive features. Okay, so that explains that even though our language has similarities, it also has its own unique features, distinctive features that we can easily recognize that language that came from a country or that came from a community. So that is our 10th language characteristic. So today we have learned that what is language and its characteristic and why is it important for us to know or to learn languages. So for our review, what is language again? Language is a method of human communication, either, what are the two? Spoken or written way, in a spoken or written way, consisting of the use of words in a structured and conventional way. Or let's simply say, language is a system of communication used by a particular country or community. Language is always changing, but we have to remember that the characteristic that we learned today, the 10 characteristics that we learned today, remains relevant and important to human communication. There are 10 characteristics that we learned today, characteristic of language. We are gonna review what are those, okay? First is, language is arbitrary. Language is arbitrary, or it is done for no particular reason, or it is done randomly. Second is, language is social. Third is, language is symbolic. Fourth is, language is systematic. Fifth is, language is non-instinctive or conventional. Seventh is, language is productive and creative. Eighth is, language is a system of communication. Ninth is, language is human and structurally complex. Tenth, and our last characteristic for today is, language is unique. Language is very important to us in every aspect of our lives because it allows people to communicate in a manner that enables the sharing of common ideas. So it's very important to us to learn language for us to communicate to one another or to people. It enables us to share ourselves, to share our thoughts, and to share who we are as a community, to have relationship, to socialize to other people. So it's very important to us, and I hope that today's topic, you have learned the different characteristic, its kind, and you have understood well what is language. So thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope you learned many things today. God bless you and thank you.